Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill. As Michigan fans, the Texas Longhorns came into Ann Arbor, not only made a statement to Michigan, but really the college football landscape that this is a legit national championship caliber team. And why I kind of say that is everybody knew Texas was capable of winning a national championship, but I feel like a lot of the preseason conversation was, all right, it's Georgia and it's Ohio State, gap, Texas, Oregon. I think Texas showed on Saturday afternoon that it is Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, as I think right now the three top dogs across the country in terms of national championship caliber teams. Want to get into why this Texas team is different from last year. There was a lot of conversation about Texas replacing all the talent that they lost to the NFL draft, and it really got answered by two things. One, player development. Like a lot of the players who were role players in 2023, they got better going into 2024. They obviously did a really nice job in the transfer portal as well. Want to get into, as Michigan fans, again, having watched this game probably 5 or 6 times,
Hurt.
it did hurt. Some of our biggest takeaways about this Texas program. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the Texas fans, y'all, even as Michigan fans, y'all showed a ton of support to the boys. We appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to hear how you guys are feeling about this Texas program as they continue into 2024. And Dill, without further ado, let's take a pivot here, right? And a lot of the national media is talking about Quinn Ewers, who I'll say this, and we'll get to it. Like by far, at least in my opinion, the most impressive performance I've seen from Quinn Ewers
If
during
he
his.
he can hurt teams by moving the pocket and making some plays with his feet consistently, especially teams like Michigan, who I still think is a very good defense. If he can do that and be more athletic and show some of that playmaking ability, along with the ability to hit those throws like he did in that early third down in that football game, I mean, he is a dynamic nightmare for teams to stop.
100%. And he's gotten a lot of national media recognition, and rightfully so. The Texas offense has. I want to start on the defensive side of the football, and it's something that I always look for, and that is front seven. How dominant can you be in the front seven? I'm going to start this one out with a hot take that, again, I would love to hear from the Texas fans. Dill, is this a better pass rush than we saw in 2023? And I know that's kind of counterintuitive because you lost two legit dudes in Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. That being said, and we kind of said this in the preseason, yeah, Texas is not going to be as dominant as they were on the inside of the defensive line in 2023. That being said, we expect a lot more from the edge rushers from Texas in 2024. And Dill, I thought Michigan had some pretty damn good tackles heading in. They absolutely whooped their tails. And you look at this Texas edge rusher room, I think it's elite in 2024.
And we were gassing them up all year coming into it. And I think we were talking like, yeah, they're going to lose some guys on the inside. Granted, guys like Vernon Boughton are playing at a really high level. And that's one, like, again, we talk player development. They have guys like that. Alfred Collins still doing his thing. But I think you're right. I mean, when you look at the horsepower they have, Ethan Burke and Barron Sorrell, we knew they were going to be really good. Those are ultra physical defensive ends who are really versatile. But when you start seeing guys like Colin Simmons and Trey Moore get entered into this equation, Colin Simmons especially looks like a unique, gifted pass rusher who I can't wait to see him develop.
That's the biggest difference, I think, and that's why I'm making this argument. Like, you go back to last year, Texas, they got a lot of their pass rush production from the inside of the defensive line. And yeah, Ethan Burke and Barron Sorrell, they were good football players who I think both have gotten better going into 2024. But you would have injected, I mean, Trey Moore's been good. But the guy that continued to pop out as I've continued to watch this game back is Colin Simmons. They kind of missed a guy like that during last year, that elite guy that when it's third and long, and Lord knows Michigan was sitting in third and long all game on Saturday, you have that guy that can pin his ears back and get after the quarterback. I think this pass rush might be better than it was in 2023, which was not really many people's expectation was it's going to take a step back. I think it might be better. I think that's one of the biggest storylines I took away from this football game. And Dill, I think secondly, and again, the Michigan offense is not going to necessarily test you down the field. That being said, even Colorado State, a team that last year threw for over 3,500 yards, Texas limited them to 71 passing yards in week one. Obviously was very good against Michigan in week two. This was the biggest problem for Texas in the 2023 season. I think it's gotten significantly better going into 2024.
And Andrew Makuba has been such a big get.
Dude,
And I thought, like, watching that Michigan game, his ability to work on Colson Loveland, make plays, break on the football, get his hands on it more. Again, just a guy who I think adds much more instinctual ability from that back end, especially in that safety spot. And then you just kind of look. I mean, Derek Williams, Malik Muhammad we would have expected them to make. I think Williams is a guy people sleep on in a sense that he's a unique talent out there athletically at that safety spot. And then Malik Muhammad, I think everyone knows. I mean, he's as talented as they come.
Yeah, and I think largely last year it was just kind of a young secondary that, again, on the biggest stage against probably the best passing attack we saw last year, the Washington Huskies, I wouldn't say got exposed, but they certainly didn't win the night. It's gotten better. A lot of these young guys who are going into year 2 or year 3 are clearly better football players than they were in 2023. So you got to give a lot of credit to Coach Sark and this coaching staff, not only going to the transfer portal and addressing some concerns, but the player development for Texas has also been really good on the defensive side of the football. Dill, let's now go to the offense. And obviously it's led by what probably is, right, the best offensive mind that we see in the sport. You got Lane Kiffin, Lincoln Riley, and Coach Sark, at least in my opinion. Let's talk about Quinn Ewers first. And we kind of said this during the offseason too. This Texas team will be different if Quinn Ewers takes that step. And you go back to 2023, Quinn Ewers was a really good football player. Could have gone to the NFL draft, been a draft pick, and would probably be playing on Sundays right now. Decides to come back for one more year. And the big question was, can Quinn Ewers reach and take that next step and kind of reach his potential that we all know he had? Dill, against one of the best defenses in the country, I think he showed everybody that he has taken that step.
And again, to me, it's like at times you felt like he was a bit along for the ride. Like, yeah, he was filled with talent around
Agreed.
him, had a really good offensive line. And when he had shots to make good throws, he'd typically make his good throws. But again, that Michigan game, I think, was a bit of a different Quinn Ewers in a sense, and his ability on 3rd and long to make things happen with his feet, keep his eyes downfield. And I mean, he made 3 or 4 plays that are such high impact plays, such things that, again, I don't know that we saw very consistently, if at all, from him last year, that I think really make this Texas team. Again, we knew they were obviously great on offense last year, but if he's going to make those type of plays a couple times a game in those big games against really good teams, that just adds such a dynamic weapon into, or not even a weapon, just like a facet to this Texas offense to get them out of trouble a few times they find themselves.
And one of my biggest takeaways and also frustrations watching that game as a Michigan fan is Michigan last year was so good against mobile quarterbacks and keep being disciplined in your rush lanes and not letting guys extend plays, right? We played a guy like Michael Penix or a guy like Jalen Milroe who are really good at those kind of things. Michigan was always so good against it. And Quinn Ewers, I don't think Michigan necessarily, because that was not really on the film last year for Quinn Ewers. He wasn't a guy that was a difference maker getting outside the pocket. Now he's that guy in 2024. Again, like you said, it adds another dimension to his football game. Now,
but it didn't even feel like to me like Michigan was giving any of that to him. It was just, again, when he was
100%.
When the pocket was collapsing a little bit around him, he'd just make that subtle movement, get up in the pocket, and then quickly make a decision. It's not like he was turning it into almost like how Caleb Williams would do it, where it turned into backyard football and he just started to run around. And Caleb Williams is great. I'm not like taking anything away from him, but what Quinn Ewers was doing, he's keeping his eyes down the field and making quick decisions when he was in that kind of scramble mode. That, to me, is a very dangerous weapon.
And the two other things that we wanted to see him take a step in is, one, attacking the deeper third, where Coach Sark would dial some things up. And yeah, Quinn would make a lot of them, but he would miss a few of them. And those are kind of throws that 2 or 3, 20-plus yards down the field, 54 yards and a touchdown. More notably, Quinn has struggled when he's under pressure and when he's blitzed at times. Lord knows Wink Martindale brought a lot of heat. You look at the numbers when he was blitzed, 10 of 16, 136 yards and a touchdown. When he was under pressure, 6 of 10, 93 yards and a touchdown. Didn't make the mistakes.
Because honestly, the one thing that really I felt like hurt Texas at times was him taking sacks. And then again, that clock seemed like it was way sped up. He was doing a good job making very quick decisions. And again, if teams can't sack this Texas team, they're going to be really, really hard to deal with. Because last year, I felt like that was the one thing they kind of could do at times when Quinn Ewers was holding the ball.
Last thing I'll talk about is I think this offensive line is not just good, it's elite. and it might have been good last year. It might have been elite last year. You can tell Texas has done it the right way. And we kind of talked about this earlier in the week. You see a lot of teams trying to cobble offensive lines together through the transfer portal. Like, why did Coach Sark not have to do that? Because he's recruited the offensive line at an elite level the last couple of years. You talk about Kelvin Banks, you talk about DJ Campbell, but more importantly, like these guys, what made Michigan's offensive line so good last year and the last couple of years, they've all played together. They've developed in the system. That's what Texas has this year. I mean, do you know how many times Wink Martindale tried to change the picture in terms of what pass protection was going to look like? How many different fronts he gave? Texas had no problem. That's how Michigan had all their success last year, is kind of picking on offensive lines and confusing offensive lines.
Like
Not only
they were able to do against Alabama, and Wink Martindale is certainly
yes,
trying to do that. I'm kind of with you. You didn't really see any of those plays like, man, Michigan really got that schemed up and got free. I mean, everything Michigan did on defense, they had to earn. The guys like Mason Graham had to make a play to get to Quinn Ewers or do something.
did we scheme up a single free? I say we as a Michigan fan, did we scheme up a free single rusher all game? No. And that probably has a lot more to do with Quinn Ewers developing as a quarterback too, and probably getting the offensive line pass protection checks in place. Like, you're seeing Quinn check all the boxes. Like, Quinn checks a lot of boxes. Make no mistake about that. But you're seeing him kind of check those final boxes that takes him from a really good quarterback to an elite quarterback. Though we had this conversation not when we were recording and said, hey, how do the quarterback ranks look nationally? Quinn Ewers was probably between 3 and 6, wherever you wanted to slate him. Not to overact to one football game, but we don't have a big sample size of a lot of quarterbacks. And look, the quarterback field this year is not elite. Like, how many elite quarterbacks do we have like we had last year with Bo Nix and Penix and Caleb and Jaden Daniels? We don't have those elite quarterbacks. Quinn Ewers is one of the few ones that I do think's elite. And I think lastly, there was a lot of talk about replacing Mitchell, replacing JT Sanders, Xavier Worthy. Do I think the wide receiver room is as good as it was last year? No, probably not. But Coach Sark is doing a phenomenal job being so multiple on offense. Gunnar Helm leads Texas in receiving yards. Did anybody have that on their bingo card? Absolutely not. Now, Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden are both over 90 yards themselves. They've had good starts to the season, but one of the things that stood out to me is it's multiple guys. And we kind of talked about it. How do you beat Michigan's defense? Well, Will Johnson, you probably just don't even go at him one time in a game. Do you have other answers on offense? Texas has multiple answers in terms of how they can move the football and dial up explosive plays on the offensive side of the football.
And they can do that from every spot. They can do it from the wide receiver spot. They can do it from the tight end spot. And then their running backs, as much as they probably lost some just pure ball carrying guys with some of the guys who went down early. I mean, Jaden Blue, Wisner, Gibson, like especially the top two, Blue and Wisner, are like really dynamic out of the backfield, have a good sense. They catch the ball effectively. They catch and run really smoothly. Like these guys, again, will they have the same rushing attack they would have had if they didn't lose the backs earlier in the season? Probably not. But I think they can do a lot with these guys, especially in the running back position through the pass game, that can kind of add maybe replace that dimension.
It's like an extension of the run game. And if there's anybody to deal with a thin running back room and finding creative ways to work around it, it's Coach Sark. And you got to give a massive shout out to the Texas fans. Whenever we talk Texas in the offseason, before CJ Baxter was even injured, hey, Jaden Blue's a guy. Jaden Blue's a guy. Damn, they were right. Like, I don't know if they were watching practice. I don't know if y'all were getting inside information, but y'all nailed it with Jaden Blue, because Jaden Blue is an absolute dude that Michigan doesn't miss many tackles in space. He made us look silly at times in space. This dude moves a little bit different. He's not the big bruiser that CJ Baxter is, but man, that Coach Sark's getting to work in terms of how you're scheming up Jaden Blue as just an offensive weapon in this Texas offense. Still, this team's checking a lot of boxes. One of the most dangerous teams in all of college football. They put on it was a statement game in Ann Arbor against the national champs. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.